If you wonder what the differences are between paranormal, supernatural, metaphysics, and the occult, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to talk about how you can jumpstart your psychic abilities. That starts with defining terms and sharing our personal stories as they relate. Hey, mystics. If you're new here, I'm Lisa Stewart.
I'm Kai Bertrand.
I'm Susy Parker Goins.
Welcome to the Mystic Mosaic podcast. We're a manifestation of Macbeth's weird sisters. Just kidding. We decided to team together to share our experiences with you as you walk your new path. As we usher in a new age of mystics, and it almost feels like we're getting our Hogwarts invitation, we recognize that many folks are awakening at different times in their life and are seeking validation, guidance, and resource for their gifts. As you discover exciting opportunities on your path, you'll have questions. Your questions will have questions. And because each of us comes from different backgrounds, we'll have various talents and experience to draw from to answer your questions. The purpose of this podcast is to help clarify, illuminate, normalize, and encourage you as you develop your gifts. Inside each of these themes, we'll break down the principles and concepts. We'll shatter stereotypes, uncover beliefs, redefine the sacred. We'll enable a positive, healthy approach to consciousness and validate your experience, and stimulate thought and talk about modernizing methods for today's environment. All of this so that you can confidently build a sustainable lifestyle for you, your family, and possibly your career. We are providing information for you to use as a launching point for your own spiritual journey. We are not giving free readings or medical advice. The information provided here is for educational purposes only. Thank you. Let's start the show. Let's talk about how we get started. Kai, would you like to talk about how you got started on your path?
Sure. I started a really long time ago, as in I was born to it, because my mom actually knew that I had gifts before I did. She did this thing when I was a kid. So here's my first story, is that she told me this, that when she met someone that she wasn't sure how they, there was something wrong with them and she wasn't sure what was up with them. She wanted to see if they were like nice or not so nice or whatever. So she couldn't decide. So what she did was she would actually put me near that person. And if I screamed my head off, she knew something was wrong with them. And if I was perfectly fine with them, she knew that they were okay. And she told me this years later, and I'm like, seriously, Mom, baby, you did this? And she's like, you were never wrong. You were never wrong. I'm like, okay. And so as
sounds like you were the baby barometer.
Pretty much. She's like, you were never wrong. And as an adult, I couldn't, like, hearing other people's stories of how they grew up and dealing with the metaphysical. Like, whenever I told my mom, I saw something, I was like, there's a lady standing there, or there's something crawling on the ceiling or whatever. She never said, oh, don't talk about that, or don't say that. She would just go, okay. And then she would either like do a blessing on our house, or she would do something about it. And so for me, it was normal. So this whole metaphysical thing is it is my normal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Susy, how did you start?
The earliest thing I can remember is when I was 8, and I had one of those, easels that have a chalkboard on one side and then that laminate you're never supposed to get paint on. And of course, somehow it manages to happen. And I was drawing, and I was in my room and I was drawing, and it was like I stepped back and I was like, oh, that looks really good. She looks like a woman, and look at the curve of her leg. Look at the curve of her boobs. What? Boobs? Oh my gosh. And I shut it down. I erased it and I shut it down, because I grew up in the Catholic Church and I had other mystical experiences, like praying so hard on Good Friday. And then at 3 o'clock, my time, not Israeli time, but my time, it all got dark and I was just like freaking out. So I really shut that down for a while until I discovered tarot in I'm thinking late 20s, early 30s. And that's what blew all the doors open. I not only discovered Tarot, I discovered Edgar Casey, the Sleeping Prophet, and he led me on to reincarnation. And then there was the Seth material and the channeling and all of that. So by that time, I had left the church. I was probably 20. I was a sophomore in college when I finally left the Catholic Church. And I spent a couple of years as an atheist. And honestly, that was just such a lonely place for me to be. And then I said, oh, now I'm agnostic. And so it just all kind of expanded from there. And I learned it's just my thirst for learning. It became at first it was a guilty pleasure. One of those things like, oh, let me like read about this because it's so not Catholic. But then I realized that there was so much more out there than my religious upbringing. And I've had all kinds of life experiences that have shown me that there's so much more than what can be contained in a book. So I guess we're all born into it. It's just what we're allowed to explore.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I was also born intuitive. I had an invisible friend. He was tall and had the attributes of Mr. Bullwinkle. Do you remember the moose from Rocky and Bullwinkle? Naturally, his
Mine was
nickname.
Harvey. He was a rabbit.
So the nickname I gave him was Mr. Bullwinkle. He wore blue polka dotted skivvies, and it's because he had junk. And I'm like, no, you know, little girls can't see that, so you got to put clothes on. And he's like, okay, there we go. And so he went everywhere with me, and he freaked out my parents. Eventually, we lost touch after we moved away from the city into the country. So I wonder if he was part of the land. I wonder if he was Fae. But my intuition, it grew stronger as I entered puberty in my teens. I was definitely clairvoyant, claircognizant, clairsentient, and on occasion clairaudient. And I knew when my friends had several medical problems. One had severe appendicitis one evening, and the next day I go into school and I'm like, hey, has anybody seen Ken? And they're like, oh yeah, he went to the ER last night. He had appendicitis. And I'm like, okay, interesting. I also saw ghosts, goblins, and assorted paranormal activity in our house and other areas where I traveled. And I could also sense the intentions of others before surrounding people could. My parents couldn't understand why I wasn't cordial to some of their friends. I'm like, no, I don't think so. I had countless deja vu moments in high school and college. And I definitely had a ton of headaches. I don't know about you too, but I had a ton of headaches in high school. Walking through, hearing what people were saying and what they were thinking, along with the locker slamming and everything else. I'm like, oh, get me out of here. I embraced my intuition, but really never told any about it. I moved south from Michigan into North Carolina and discovered the Rhine Research Center because, like you, Susie, I could pick up all the books on ESP, Edgar Casey, and the rest of them and just devour them because that was my guilty pleasure. And I would blame it on my brother. I'd go to the library or the mobile, remember the mobile libraries in the vans? And I'm like, hey, do you have any books on ESP? And they're like, oh, why do you want to know about that? And I'm like, I'm getting them from my brother. Yeah, that's it. But yeah, so I went down to the Rhine Research Center because I'd learned about it and got tested. I took lots of classes, got tested. That was a lot of fun. But it was still really extremely limiting for me. Living in the South in the Bible Belt, I couldn't tell anybody about it. I never shared anything about it. When I heard somebody say, oh, we have a ghost in our house, I'm like, wait, you have a ghost? Let's talk about that. And they're like, no, we can't talk about that. And they would, take a left turn. So that would make me really sad. But so now, the past few years, I'm able to meet folks like you, Kai and Susie. I'm big stalker fan here, and I'm so thrilled that we get to do a podcast together. Woo! This is fun. So for the first 50 years of my life, I thought ghost sightings, talking to animals, and knowing that someone was painfully sick before the news hit was just chaos, and that it just came and went with the wind. I had no idea we could use these as tools. So since I have experienced some incredible insights like spirit guides, I know that angels are real now, and even astral traveling. Let's talk about any other areas of expertise that you two might have. Who wants to start?
Go, Susie.
Good. Other areas of expertise. So, not only do I do tarot, opening up to Edgar Casey taught me a lot about past life exploration, and then Brian Weiss's books, and I think his name is Michael Newton. And he's talking about the journey of lives. And so from them, I've gleaned different ways to help people resolve these past life lessons. And then I became Reiki in, I think, October 2010. And that taught me a whole lot of stuff. And what I have liked is that it's just been this domino effect of, oh, I know about this now. Where else does it take me? So there are some things that I have opened up to, like particularly during the past 3 years, like mediumship. And I understand that there are still egos involved in the mediumship. I've had people who have crossed over who just looked at me and went, yeah. It's like, well, okay, they're not going to talk to me. And then I opened up to channeling, which for me, I think we all channel in some way. It just looks different on us. It's like, that piece of clothing looks different on this body as it does on that body. So it all manifests in different ways. And that's a big thing about why I'm so excited about starting this podcast, is that we can break it down so people can say, oh, this looks good on me, this one doesn't work, and go through it. But so usually when I'm talking at these online events, it's, I do past life stuff, and I can talk to ancestors, and I can do generational healing now. I'm okay talking to pets. I can't talk to my own dog though, so I don't feel really experienced with that. But I think the great thing about doing what we do, working in the metaphysical or looking beyond this physical, is that there is so much out there, and we don't have to limit ourselves by what we think we can do. I like the play aspect of it that the three of us includes. Like, oh, okay, here, and walking over, like Kai slinging her arm around my shoulder just to keep me from walking away. It's like, you got this thing going. I'm like, what? So I love the learning that we all get to do from each other. Was that the question?
I'm just too busy going, get it off me, get it off me.
No, I'm just like, oh, that's a new behavior. What was that? So,
Well, yeah,
but Kai
because
explained that she didn't need me wandering off again.
well, yeah, that's the thing. I've been trying to that particular day. I've been trying to grab onto you like the whole day, but it was like every time I looked over, you were busy or somebody was talking to me about something. I'm like, I need to catch her. So I'm like, okay, let's like physically restrain. Throw the arm over. Gotcha.
Kai, I can't help but wonder, and I know this isn't part of the podcast, but I can't help but wonder about the games that you like to play with store owners, and I can't help but wonder if you weren't playing the same game with Susy that day. I'm just saying.
It might have been, but it's like I have to, because I mean, really, a lot of times I could just like let stuff go, right? But then I'm like, no, it's not to her benefit to do that. And but at the same time, because we were at a show and we were seeing people, I didn't want to interrupt whoever she had going on, and I didn't want to make myself not available for my clients either. So I had, I'm just like, okay, when the time is, and I basically just set that intention. I'm like, okay, when it's time for me to find her, I will be able to find her. And literally, like, I wasn't paying attention, and then I turned and there she was, and I heard, my guide was like, go. I'm like, okay. So then I went, and it looked like she was going to move again. So that's why I put my arm around her, which is something I never do. Like, I am not a hugger. I am not a person who touches people. I don't do that.
Yeah.
But something was like, grab her. So I did.
That big neck.
That's what sent me over. It's like, you're not a hugger. What the hell? So,
something's wrong.
I could just see your guides all falling out of the tank going, go, go, go.
That's kind of what, because I was sitting there, la, 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 then I heard, she's over there, go. I'm like, get out of my seat and go over there. I'm like, okay. And then I was like, it was like, yeah. Spirit has a weird way of getting you to do stuff. It's just, it's weird. But I was like, they're like, you have to help her get this thing off. And I was like, okay, because I mean, Okay, so what I do, or one of the things that my gifts is that I can actually see spirits, demons, angels, all that stuff. I can see all that stuff. Sometimes it's like sometimes I can actually see it with my physical eyes. Most of the time I actually see it in my mind's eye or just get an impression of it. And so that particular day, this incident that we're talking about, Susy had told me in the morning, I've been kicking stuff off of me all day because our energy field can get things attached to it, like energy that doesn't belong to us, and we'll talk about that later. But so she was saying, I've been clearing myself of energy all morning so far already. And then I said, well, you got another one that we need to take care of. But she had to go give a talk, so I wasn't going to interfere with that. And then, like I said, then the day just progressed. And then finally it was like, okay, there's your opportunity, there's your window, go. And then, then later on, then she came over and she took care of it. And, I helped her through this process. So it was like her learning how to do another technique or to like further her skills. Because for me, and which is part of the purpose of this podcast, is like, we want to teach people how to do things themselves.
Yeah.
Not necessarily have to depend on another person, because there are times when other people are not available. Therefore, you must do it yourself. I mean, there's some things that you're not going to be able to handle without professional or, more experienced help, I should say. But most of the stuff you're going to come across, you should be able to handle for yourself. And that's why we're doing this, so that you know how to do that and you don't get in trouble.
Right. Kai, could you share your tagline for us, please?
Stay shielded.
No. How you talk about how you remove negative energies.
Okay. Yeah.
My specialty.
Yeah. My specialty is that I remove negative energy from people, places, and things.
Thank you. Started with tarot. I picked up a actually spirit animal deck from a Native American shop back in my late 20s and started playing with that a little bit, but I got overwhelmed and I put it away. I was in bad company, so I didn't play with it too much, but I was really looking forward to it. And now today I'm really enjoying automatic writing. I will credit automatic writing for helping me to channel. I was using automatic writing on little index cards like this when people would ask questions, and suddenly I would get hits and I would throw out one or two words, but then somebody suggested, why don't you use automatic writing for your client consultation? And I'm like, I thought I was doing that, but I went a little bit further, and then suddenly I was writing out a paragraph and it just seemed like I was taking too long writing, that suddenly I was just channeling, verbally through my mouth. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So that was a nice little connection for me to start embarking down that journey. So I'm super excited to get started with those two modalities. Shall we move on to topic B, the differences between supernatural, paranormal, occult, and metaphysics? All right, let's talk about the working definitions for each. Who wants to start?
I'll take supernatural.
Okay.
Because it's kind of my wheelhouse in a lot of ways. So, our working definition is that it's difficult to explain away with science. It's, because you're unable to repeat miracles, observe guardian angels, or capture a soul in a way that we can comprehend. The term was first used in the 15th century. So supernatural is anything that's, that is beyond what we normally consider natural. So so that's what we're going to do for supernatural.
Okay. Let me take paranormal. That's anything outside what we consider normal, which includes having psychic abilities, paranormal phenomenon such as ghosts, haunted houses. And it's not necessarily evil. We hope that eventually we will prove this phenomenon with science, and it was defined as recently as the 1920s.
And I'll take occult, which is...
And I'm going to add in something after that one. I mean, with my definition of occult, so go for it, Kay.
Okay. This is the area where most nefarious things happen, such as calling demons, generating curses, casting spells against the will of others, like love spells for a specific person. Practices here can be considered evil.
My understanding of the occult is that this is hidden knowledge. So it could be more than just the nefarious stuff. I know in paganism or in witchcraft, there's the right path, meaning right as in the direction, and then the left path is the dark path. But it's, for me, it's information that's not generally known. So it could be nefarious, not necessarily, just people don't know it. And then metaphysical, meta, if you, when you break it down, means beyond. It's an overarching thing. So we're looking at something beyond what we call the physical, and that's where we get into energy and the spiritual aspect of things. It's got the intention behind it of spiritual growth, and it's not about harming somebody else. For me, metaphysical means that we're all here to uplift each other and to help each other move. Because as Peter Levine says, as I heal, you heal, and as you heal, I heal. So anything we do with a metaphysical nature helps everybody to shift their energy, so we all benefit from it.
That's great. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Kai. So I have a story to share, and I would like for each of you to tell me if it's supernatural, paranormal, metaphysical, maybe even the occult. But here's the story. Back in high school, I used to love to walk to school, and I couldn't do it very often because I was usually carrying my instrument and books and things like that. And we only lived a half mile away. It was in the spring, and it was about 7:00, 7:15 in the morning. Beautiful spring day. And it was also foggy. And I love the fog. I love walking through the fog and the mist. And so we had a 1/4 mile long driveway. So usually I'd take the bus at the end of the driveway, but I just kept walking, took a right down the gully, and I faced a really thick area of fog. I couldn't see. I mean, the distance to be able to see was probably 3 feet, maybe. And suddenly I got this really bad feeling, like stop. And I stopped in my tracks. And it felt like some kind of boundaries, like don't pass this boundary. And the hairs on my neck stood up, and I'm like, oh shit, I need to back up. So I backed up, and I was backing up off, on the hill. And then I turned around and I ran back down the road, down my driveway, opened the front door, and was like, Mom, I've decided to take the bus. I don't know why I need to tell you, but I need to take the bus. She's like, okay. So shut the door, back up the driveway, meet the bus, jump on the bus. The bus goes down the gully, passes an abandoned car. And I'm watching the car as we're riding by. I go to school. Nothing out of the ordinary happens. I come back. My dad works in Flint, so he would always bring home the Flint Journal, the evening newspaper. So he did. Same time, same bad channel. Throws it on the dinner table. The front page reads, "Woman raped and murdered in the small town abandoned in car on such and such a road." I look at my mom, I look at my dad, and I had just told my mom's like, why did you take the bus? And I'm like, something didn't feel right. And my dad just looked at me, he looked at my mom, and I'm like, and I just walked away, because for me, it wasn't out of the ordinary, but it was just a matter of going, holy crap, what could I have walked into? So, ladies.
Well, my sense of that is that I think that falls into the category of paranormal. And I think that the whole purpose of you not seeing that, my sense of that as you were talking was that she was already dead by that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so your guide stepped in and didn't want you to see that. So that's why it made you go back.
Yeah, I was getting supernatural because there was something outside of the natural. And, if we're talking about psychic abilities, I mean, it seems to me that supernatural and paranormal could kind of have a lot of crossing over.
Yeah.
And then, you're throwing in guides. Oh, that makes it metaphysical. So it was just, well done, Lisa, for getting caught up in it.
And that's the thing about a lot of this stuff, is that everything overlaps in different places. So it's like,
Yeah.
So in some ways it's kind of hard to define them as like, oh, it's definitely this or it's definitely that, because there's so much overlap depending on the circumstances, because it can be any or all depending on what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what
So
I
you were
thought.
sensing the energy. You were sensing the energy, which is a whole nother episode.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. Do you have stories? Either one of you have stories that you'd like to share in this?
I do.
If you come up with good,
Yeah.
because
So yeah, there's
okay.
a lawnmower that's running. So sorry about that. For me, like in the last place that I lived in Hawaii, we, it was not like a great place. It was a giant house that had been sectioned off into different apartments. And I knew that there were demons next door in my neighbor's apartment because he was bonkers. And I could see stuff attached to him all the time. And what used to bother me most about living there is like I actually used to watch demons walk through the walls into our place.
Oh,
And so I spent a lot of time just trying to clear stuff out, clear things away from us. And, um, it didn't always work. One of the things that happened while I was there, I was really sick. I had like a really bad sinus infection. And I was still doing I was working for a theater at this time and I was doing a show. And I was working backstage. And, the show must go on. Even if you're sick, you still got to be there. So I went like just almost totally delirious, but I still had to do stuff. I was sleeping in between scenes. My friend would wake me up to do something and then I'd go back to sleep. So one night I came home and the way the house was situated, it's like we had two apartments and the two stairways were like this. One apartment was on this side, another was on this side. And so I went to go up our staircase, and at the bottom of my neighbor's staircase, there was like this little gargoyle looking thing, this little demon, and it looked like it was paused to jump on me. And I was so sick at the time, I didn't realize that I was actually seeing it with my eyes because it was casting a shadow. And I looked at it and I said, "You are not going to jump on me. I see you. It's not happening. Like, leave me alone. I'm tired. I'm sick. It's not happening." And I turned around and I walked up the stairs and I went to bed. And then I woke up and I was like, "What did I do last night?"
that's great.
I actually like told the thing off. I was like, and it was like staring at me like, "You can see me." Like I had like thought about this afterwards. I mean, because I remember I literally was like, "You are not jumping on me. It's not happening, buddy." And it didn't dawn on me until hours later that I was like telling off a demon or something. I was like, "What is that?"
I want you as my friend, Kai.
So, Kai, you bring up theater stuff, and it seems to be the rule that theaters have their own ghosts. There was this one place I worked at in Dallas called the Theater Garage, which was a garage that had been converted into a theater. And so there were lots of stories about this guy who would sit in the back, and I don't remember what his name was, Rick or something, but he'd like hang out there and just go, "Hey, dude," and then you'd go back there and he wasn't there. Um, I did see, what was it? We had just moved up here. So my oldest was 3 months old because we had just moved up here. And I saw my mom, who had passed over from colon cancer when I was 13, and she was sitting in one of those slider rockers. And she just looked at me and she said, "It's going to be okay." And seeing the course of my life since then, it's like, whoa, okay, cool. That was all kinds of things. So those to me are supernatural. But then there was one time I was in college and there was this big party going on and I just didn't feel up to going. And as it turned out, that was the night my friend John decided to commit suicide. I termed it as sensing this rip in the universal fabric. And so that was me sensing something. I missed out on a chance to say goodbye, but I also just was far more sensitive to what was going on than that. Um, I don't see, there's so many things that happen. And of course, I can't remember any more than those. So,
Well, here's the other story that actually didn't happen to me, but happened to a friend of mine, which is she and I had gone to Maui to stay at her uncle's house. And I'm sleeping on the floor. My friend's sleeping on the bed. And, you know, I'm passed out on the floor. Next thing you know, she's kicking me to get up on the bed with her. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Later on, she tells me, after she's done freaking out, that she got up to go use the bathroom, and she saw what looked like me sitting on the floor. And she was like, she was gonna ask me, like, what are you doing sitting up in the dark? And then she realized that I was still sleeping on the floor, you know, laying flat. And what freaked her out is the person who sat next to me, she said, looked exactly like me, but was dressed in ancient Hawaiian clothes. And then what she did is she bolted over to the light, flipped the light on, and it was still there.
Wow.
A couple minutes. And then it finally disappeared. And then that's when she started kicking me to wake up. You know, so I'm like totally disoriented, don't know what's going on. She's like, get up on the bed, get up. You know, I'm thinking there's a bug on the floor. I'm like, is it a centipede? Like, what are we doing? And then she tells me the story about this ghost that looks exactly like me. And then a few months later, we talked to a psychic who we knew at the time, and this was before I started doing anything. And she said, oh yeah, that was like, you know, one of your grandmothers coming to visit. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I have experiences where I was looking at the Barnes exhibit in Fort Worth, and they were this couple who bought all kinds of impressionist paintings, and one of them was a painting by Renoir, Pierre Auguste Renoir, and I looked at it and I felt this big pull at my heart. It's like I was there, and that's one of the things that really got me started looking into past life stuff. So I knew I had been one of the people in the painting, and being
Wow.
able to make those flippant comments. You know, there's another painting of his where it's a couple dancing and the light is dappled across them. And the first channel I ever met was saying, look how lovingly he looks at her. And I said, oh, he looked that way at all of us. I was like, where the hell did that come from? So I was just like, that's what really gets me going.
That's awesome. I one last note to what you said, Susie. I think that I have an affiliation for George Seurat, because the moment I walked into the Chicago Institute of Art, there's the painting, The Picnic, right there as soon as you walk in. It's huge, it's mammoth. And I'm like, oh, and I don't know if it was the fact that I now recently learned that I can hear color, but it has to be massive, like Monet's water lilies. I can hear them speaking, just the tones of them. But that mammoth painting, for some reason, I think that I'm connected to it. I'm not sure how. Maybe we'll work on a past life again together. But let's move on to talk about where the points they tend to overlap. Who wants to take paranormal phenomenon?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Go for it. I got to read my notes.
So, paranormal phenomenon has power stored in a situation or is influenced by something with power to exist. Experiences with the paranormal can be positive, negative, or neutral, such as the Oregon Vortex near Gold Hill, Oregon. I actually went there because a friend of mine was saying, oh, let's go to the Vortex. I'm like, what Vortex? She's like, the one that's in Oregon. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, road trip. I said, okay. And my experience of the thing was incredible. Like, first off, I had to put a shield up because it kicks out so much energy that it started giving me a headache, and we weren't even close to it. That's how powerful it is. It's crazy, crazy powerful. It kicks out so much energy that you cannot use a cell phone anywhere near it. Wow. Like, everybody who lives in the area have to have landlines. They have to. It's ridiculous. It's like you go, I mean, it's really cool because like it generates its own gravitational field. So like certain things, like, you know, balls will roll in opposite directions, and I mean, just all kinds of interesting, crazy things. But yeah, and if you stand still, it actually kind of makes you like rotate while you're standing still. At certain points. Yeah, they actually have these little tiles on the ground where you stand, and you just stand still, and your body literally starts to move in a circle. Wow. It's the craziest thing. So that is, and then they've also talked about, they actually have pictures of pictures that people took of the area where they saw like ghosts and orbs and all that kind of stuff. They have a display of that there. But it was really, really interesting. But overall, because I'm like, is like checking for, anything suspicious there energy wise. The energy was powerful, but neutral. Like I didn't feel anything like super positive or super negative about it. And it actually didn't feel like a vortex for me. It actually felt like a wormhole. Like it felt like you could go straight through it and end up someplace completely different.
Wow.
It was really interesting getting a sense of that.
Where do extraterrestrials fit in with this? Because, there's a place, I think it's in Brazil. Shirley MacLaine wrote a book about it and how she saw all of these points of light are coming out at it. Apparently there is a place, I think in Oregon, it's called the SETI Ranch, where a lot of extraterrestrial life activity goes on. How do they fit in?
I don't know. I mean, I got a sense that it was actually connecting to like either another universe or another part of the universe. But it, like I said, it didn't, it felt just like a big open door kind of deal. It didn't feel like it was like another dimension per se. Because, vortexes for me, like they feel like it's another dimension, but this was like on a whole nother scale, like completely different.
Did they have a fence or anything in front of it to prevent you from walking into it and getting lost?
Well, no, it's just the whole area has this energy, and you literally like step into it.
For whatever reason, for whatever reason, I'm sensing something black. I'm sensing some kind of cave. So it makes me wonder if once you walk into it, there is a cave or some kind of dimensional window inside that, because that's what I'm seeing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and that's why it's like and for me that was like the depth factor, because sometimes when you look at portals, like you feel like, okay, there's the other side right there, right? With this thing, it felt like the other side was way down there. So the fact that you're getting like this cave image, it's like, yeah, it could be like that, but it's like deep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't do the astral travel thing and go all the way down, because I was just like, yeah, I don't feel like I want to do that. But like as far as I did go sense wise, it was pretty deep. So I felt like that there's way more to do there.
Because
Fascinating.
there's a lot of documented vortices around, like Mount Shasta, and Sedona apparently is just rife with them. And
yeah, I've been,
that's-
and yeah, Sedona's vortexes are really interesting. A few actually, and they resonate completely different. They're all different, because when I went there, there's some that actually felt really good, like really comfortable, and there's a couple that like gave me a headache and made me sick. So it's really interesting. The
Okay.
ones in Sedona.
Okay.
Can't wait to go. Can't wait to go. So before we head on to the next point, there is a place, and I know this happens all over the world, but there's a place in Michigan called Irish Hills where you can have two people stepping on a rock, and you can have the taller person stepping on a tall rock, and you can have a shorter person stepping on a rock that's 6-8 inches lower than the tall rock. And yet when you're standing back and you see these two people, the shorter person is taller than the tallest person. So there's some kind of paranormal. Do either of you understand? And
well, that's what happens at the Vortex in Gold Hill. Like they do a whole thing with showing you that kind of stuff, just like that. It's exact same stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
So
Let's see.
I haven't been to Sedona, and I can only imagine the one in Oregon is very hilly and mountainous, Mount Shasta, that kind of thing. I know the Irish Hills was very hilly. Do any of these exist in flatland?
I'm shifting over to talking about portals. When I had a business with Jessica Martin called Rabbit's Pantry, we had a portal there, a healing portal. So there was energy. We set up the grid and she did rituals, and I would clean it every day. And so we had an energy portal there. I think there was another I think she was another Hawaiian kahuna who would come in and talk about how strong it was. And so that was the goal of the place, was to shift the energy of it. Um, but the 3D bureaucracy kind of knocked that one out because that wasn't in alignment. The energy was in alignment, but the physical was not. And then a friend of mine's got an energy portal on her property that she's going to be leaving the property in about a year, so we need to close that off. We've been working with that as far as um, we put stuff into it, so we make offerings to it. I don't know how many rocks are in there right now, but we make offerings to it and we ask it to help us with whatever healing's going on. But that's when she's been a steward of ever since she's lived on the property.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. Just to hit a couple more notes on paranormal phenomenon, I believe ESP, mediumship, things like that would fall under this category as well. Supernatural. This is one of my favorite topics. This is where we get into the territory of myth and legend, the place of the chupacabra, Bigfoot, and the Mothman. This is also where we can call on the power of other creatures for help, such as dragons, elementals, angels, and demons. I'm also thinking Yeti and Sasquatch, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
that category.
that all falls in. But you can also include stuff like fairies and little people and
Yeah, the
yeah.
Fae and yeah. Back when I was in high school and getting jiggy with it with my boyfriend in high school. Actually, we were just kissing. I was too afraid to get pregnant, so I'm like, no, we're not doing that. But anyway, so one evening, right? Once one Saturday night.
TMI.
I know. I'll cut that maybe. After the movies, we go find a quite quiet, dark corner. And so we found this dirt road that had a few houses on it, but a lot of trees. We would park away from the houses, but we were still probably a quarter mile off the main road. And it was probably fall. So all of the grass was really tall, like 3 foot or so. And so we're smooching, and I look up and I'm like, what is that? Something incredibly tall, dark, sinuous. If either of you have walked through tall grass, you know what a trip hazard it can be. Don't even try running through it, right? Because they're like, fall, fall. This thing was just walking right through it. And it looked like it wasn't even touching the grass, even though it looked like it had feet that was touching the ground. I didn't see the feet. I could only see the darkness above the grass, and then 8, 9, 10 feet tall. So that's probably one of my paranormal supernatural beings, aside from Mr. Bullwinkle, of course, that I think I saw. How about you?
That sounds like an elemental to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell me more?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because elementals are all over the place. They're under the ground, they are in the trees, they're in the rocks. I mean, they can be anywhere. They're beings of great, great power. Like you can't mess with elementals. Like you just need to be nice to them, or they mess you up. Is what it comes down to. And that one could have just been out for a stroll. I mean, because really they pretty much do what they want. They are stewards of the land, and they, whatever their territory is, and they pretty much control everything having to do with nature and whatever in that area. So yeah, and if you piss off an elemental, like that's how they get back at you. Like, that's when you have like these weird little occurrences that happen, all kinds of stuff. So that's my thought, is you were probably just in the territory of an elemental and it was just taking a walk. I mean, if it wanted you to leave, it would have made sure it let you know it wanted you to leave.
Yeah.
See, that's what I noticed. There's so much hype around these that everybody needs to be afraid of them, and I'm not. I've been working with dragons for such a long time, and everybody's like, oh, they're so scary, or the elementals or the fae are going to mess with you or whatever. And I'm like, how about treating them with respect? I work with crystal skulls, and people are like, ew, their skulls. Like, no, that one's called Larry the Lapis, and here's Inato, my mahogany obsidian, and I've got all of these different kinds because it's the energy there that I'm working with, and maybe it's that lesson in going beyond what the physical looks like, that facade, because in that, like, the definition of paranormal, supernatural, and metaphysical is that we're looking beyond whatever's on the surface. And that's a big part of how I feel like all of these definitions are all just like layered on layered. It's like aspects that, everything's energy, but what aspect of energy are we looking at and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
So,
a lot of it is intention driven as well. So it's like, what is your intention where you're trying to tap all this stuff? And yeah, it's like, as long as, for the most part, as long as you're not being a jerk about stuff, like most things won't hurt you. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some things that are mischievous to the point where they're okay with killing you, but for the prank, but most things are not like that, at least not in my experience. So it's like, yeah, just don't be a jerk about it and think like you're in charge, because I think that's part of the reason is people think, well, if I can control an elemental, it's like, oh no.
no.
You can ask an elemental for help and see if they will. They may not. They don't have to, and they know it. You can ask them to do something. Like I had this one woman who had an elemental that was under her house, and it was causing lots and lots of problems. And so I asked the elemental nicely if it would consider moving out further away into an area where there were no people so that it would not be disturbed. And it decided yes. And then the activity at her house stopped.
Nice.
So yeah, you just, it's possible to work with these beings sometimes not. You just, you take a shot.
Yeah.
And I think when
and
human ego gets in the way, that it's infinite power and all this, and I control that, it's like, well, it's not that way.
Yeah. And I think that another aspect of the elementals and fae and the rest is that when I was living out in the country, we lived on a river, and there was we'd walk along the river, and we'd only walk along as far as we could without interrupting somebody else's property. And a lot of times the property might be just, cornfields and things like that. So it was okay to keep walking. And we knew the neighbors, but the other set of neighbors we didn't talk to all that much. They had just moved in. But along the shoreline, I found this little green area among the trees. And the grass looked like it hadn't been mowed, but it was still short. It looked relatively new. It looked, trying to think of the best word. It almost looked like it was a little fantasy dimension, because there was trilliums there, and just the environment was just, it felt like a bubble. And I found it a couple times, and I would go to that and just sit there. And I don't know that I saw anything, but I felt such great comfort just sitting in this little area protected by trees, in this grass that wasn't pervaded by weeds or anything else. It looked like it had been taken care of. By whom? I don't know, but it was a beautiful little spot.
I have a friend who when she lived, I think it was in Massachusetts somewhere, she had found like a little place similar to that, just a little clearing that had nothing in it or whatever. And she was, same thing. She's very content to be there. Like, don't know. I think she found it maybe twice, and then after that, she couldn't find it again.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
There's the Earth Sanctuary on Whidbey Island near us that's got all different areas that have different energy to them. So there's like a Stonehenge replica there, and then they have the Tibetan prayer wheels, and I think there's a labyrinth there. But that's one of those places where the energy is so well cared for, and there is some very conscientious stewards there who help maintain that energy. It's really nice.
I'm gonna have
It's
to
a
go
ferry
visit
boat
that.
ride.
Yeah, it's like, I've never been. That sounds fun.
Yeah,
Oh, it's very cool.
we should meet.
Very
We should
cool.
meet up. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
And let's talk about points of the occult and the metaphysical. Who wants to start?
About how they all overlap.
So, like, the occult here is
that
the
what
power
we're
that's
thinking?
gathered and directed for a purpose, usually negative in nature. Often the power is gathered from people, willingly or not. And demonic power can also be called upon and used here. And can require a sacrifice. And then, of
Yeah,
course,
I can see where that has been promoted by, say, any Tim Curry movie where he has horns and stuff like that. But um, you know, I think it's like energy, and that's another layer of ego where you can say, I have all of this power and I can control all the elements. But on the other side of it, it can be very positive. Witchcraft is using the elementals or using whatever energies you have around you. And again, it's all about your intention. What is your intention behind it?
Mhm.
So, yeah, everybody seems to want to be manifesting money. It's like, oh, okay, let's do some other things. What else do we need to shift? So I don't see it necessarily as being negative. There is power that you can secure when, as Kai was talking about earlier, you can work with the elementals, but you got to ask them. I think that's one of
Yeah.
the things we all do when we work with even clients. We ask for their help. We ask for their consent.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I had
demonic power comes in when you start ripping it out of its natural place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think just in general, for at least in my experience, like, people who like focus specifically on the occult, like they are not, it's true that a lot of the knowledge is hidden, and there's a reason why it's hidden. And it's because of the fact that a lot of it is ego driven and is, methods willing to do whatever is necessary, even at the expense of others. And I think
Yeah.
that I think that's the defining factor right there is, not necessarily that a cult by itself is bad, but that people who tend to focus on the occult, that's usually their intention for doing so.
Right. Yeah. In case in point, I had somebody contact me a number of weeks or so ago asking me how to create sigils for demons. And I'm like, sounds like you want to unleash hell. And they're like, no, my nephew just wants to harness the power of demons. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Not going to do it.
Yeah, see, that's what drives
No.
me crazy. That's that thing about, well, if I can tap into something, then I can control it. It's like, no, so Christian demons,
That's
like
hubris.
they have been around much longer than we have. They are much stronger. They are much smarter than we are. It's like, if you think you're going to control a demon, it's like, sweetie, you'll be a puppet in a minute.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's just hubris. So yeah, no, not going to be a part of that. So
Absurd.
yeah. Okay. And then metaphysical. This is where power is gathered from universal love and light. It's used for positive benefit and the highest good for all concerned. All right.
So, and as much as I keep debating this occult point as being all dark metaphysical, everybody seems to think it's all light and stuff. But there are some metaphysicians I know who, again, it gets down to ego, and they think I'm the only one who has an answer, and they'll make these definite statements, and I come up and go, no, this is the way I see it. And one can manipulate it. So it's like when I send out any kind of energy or love, I make sure it's not binding to me, because there are bindings you can do, but you're binding that person's outcome to yourself. And, we're talking spells there. So the metaphysical ideally would be about universal love and light, but then there are still people who are using it to manipulate other people into saying, I'm the only one who has this knowledge. I'm the only one who can do this for you. And I know we all sit there and go, yeah, not us. Or they'll say things that it's like that passive aggressive Southern thing, like, oh, bless your little old heart there, honey. And you're just like, I just got damned to the eternal flames. Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
So it's all got to be about balance, what we're willing to do. And understandably, we want to do all the things that help other people uplift us because we're uplifted and all that. So yeah,
Yeah. Well,
I'd
a
love it
lot
to
of
all
it
be
is,
for positive good.
I mean, we're talking generalities. I mean, because yeah, I know some
Right.
metaphysicians, I'm just like, look, like if you get any darker, you would disappear. You're so dark. Like, don't even try, right? So, and then there are some people who are like, that I've met that other people are like, oh, that person's really dark. That person's really dark. And I'm like, no, I'm not getting that. So it's, yeah, you're right. Ego plays a huge part of it. But you know what? We're people, so that's to be expected. So yeah, this is just like generally what we're looking at. This is like kind of what you can, expect when you're dealing with these types of things, but always, keep your eyes open because you never know. I mean,
It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
I know
It's just
someone
this
who's,
vast spectrum. Yeah.
she's,
Can I just can I just throw out right now so everybody hears this? If ever you get an invitation from somebody that says you have a curse on you, I can remove it for $500 or $5,000, run the other way. You might have a curse, but that's not the way to take care of that. So no, do not ever play into that kind of spammy email or DMs or PMs or anything. So no, just turn around. Thank you very much and run.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that stuff that evokes fear. That's
Mhm.
like the first thing that you're like, nope, gotta go.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So let's talk about intention driven, as in there is no intention in the supernatural. Whatever is there is there. It's the power extracted or used from the supernatural occurrence that then falls into one of the other categories. So we got paranormal, occult, and then metaphysical again.
Okay, so paranormal things can get stronger when others send energy for something to continue, such as wanting a haunted house to get worse, so people will experience more. There's, and just in general, like for instance, when you go to a haunted house and people are like, oh, we want it to be really haunted so we can get stuff on camera, and that sends more energy to whatever is there to like be able to beef up. Now whether or not it's going to actually show itself is a completely different matter, but it's like, hey, thanks for the energy.
Yeah.
And
I found that interesting that you said that, Kai, back in a former discussion, because it didn't occur to me that haunted houses or people who like to watch scary movies and so forth, I didn't realize that that was an amplifier. I didn't realize that that was a generator. So that's a really interesting tip to share. Thank you
yeah,
for
it's
that.
like everything that you focus on, you put your energy in, you send energy to. So
Yeah.
that's why, that's why everyone says, oh, think happy thoughts,
Mhm.
work on your affirmations, because that's what you're lending your energy to. Like the less you think about all the negative stuff, like if you think about negative stuff, you're sending energy to it. So if
Right.
you think the happy stuff, that's what you go to. So if you send energy to a haunted house and want to be like, oh my God, I really want it to be like super crazy in there, so we're really scared, you're sending energy to whatever's there.
Mhm.
And if it's just a thing, like a pop-up thing that a bunch of people put together and, we're just going to get together and have a good time kind of deal, then that's fine, because it's like, it's adding to the entertainment type of atmosphere.
Right.
But if it's a house that actually has like something really bad in it, you've just given it a snack.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Even building it, because the intention is, let's make this scary. Oh, what else can we add to this? And suddenly, as you are pushing out that power, you're inviting things in so that they're already there to help with the atmosphere.
And intention is the basis for all of this stuff. Whatever you send out, you're going to get back threefold, 10,000-fold, whatever. And so, yeah, thoughts and prayers, though, that's a phrase that's become so empty because there's nothing really behind it, but sending out that love or intention that you want the best outcome. That's another place where people want to control it. I can do this and I can just send it to have $1 million. And in learning about intentions and affirmations, like adding the phrase like, or better, I want the best outcome for everybody. I mean, there's this example: as soon as you decide to buy a red car, bang, that's all you see around you.
Yeah.
And that's a really nice physical manifestation of how intention and focus can help you reinforce what it is, what that practice. That would be a fun practice. I'll add that to the end.
Yeah, definitely. We could talk about manifestation. I didn't realize that I don't want to call myself a super manifester, but I get into the flow very easily, and then I suddenly understand what it is I want. Then suddenly, boom, there it is. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's law of attraction. I did not know that. A lot of times before I came out of the supernatural, the spiritual closet a few years ago, I didn't realize that I was co-creating. I didn't realize I was manifesting. And now after the fact, I'm like, oh, okay, now that I'm awake, or at least semi-awake, I feel like I can now consciously co-create. So yeah, it is okay. Where do I want to focus my intention? And it's fascinating how the verbiage that I'm learning in the spiritual world we use in the mundane world, but take it for granted. And there's just so much overlap. So yeah. Thanks for that, Susie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing about, I was reading this thing about, with manifestation, in that, instead of thinking about, I just need money, like manifesting money, like think about what you want to do with that money.
Exactly.
What is the thing that you want money to get for you? Like focus on that instead. And then that will allow it to come to you in a different way other than through just the obtaining money.
Right. Right. And then also making space for that, because there's that whole discussion about, I want to win the lottery, but there's something in the back of your head that says, do you though? Because then there's responsibility that comes with that windfall. There are all those people that don't talk to you now suddenly who want to be your friend. Do you know how to deal with that kind of energy? And I think it was Ken Honda who talked about the energy of money, and there's actually a god of money. I found that absolutely fascinating as well, but we should talk about that in another episode, because that's a huge discussion right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anything else that we want to talk about before we wrap up and move into the next one?
I guess, we should just finish up here where, intention driven, most of what occurs in like occult stuff, I wouldn't say all of it, but most of it, uses power gathered for a negative purpose, which requires the user to intend to cause harm in some way or at the expense of another person in some way. This is the kind of stuff where you do like love spells for a specific person, regardless of whether or not they actually want to be with you or not. It's that kind of thing. Like people think, oh, that's harmless. I'm like, no, it isn't.
No.
Because you're going to get someone else's will.
Yeah.
I actually talked an 8-year-old out of developing a love spell. She says, I want him to love me. It's like, do you really know him? First off, you're 8. And secondly, do you want to bind him to you? And I don't know if I talked her out of it. I'm sure the proprietor of the store was able to talk her out of it, but it's like, be careful what you ask for.
Yep.
That's
because you may just get it in not the form that you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then the overall intention of metaphysical is to create better circumstances, such as using the law of attraction, or helping yourself and others heal. I mean, that's the general thing of metaphysical stuff, is that you work on the light side, you work towards the greater good, highest purpose, that kind of stuff. That's the general intention in working in metaphysical stuff. I mean, egos notwithstanding.
Yeah.
But there is shadow work that can occasionally be required, which is not a cult, but it's looking at your own trauma stuff or things that are helping you, because we light and dark help to balance and give texture and dimension to our lives. Shadow work is really big and deep in a whole nother episode. I hope we're keeping notes.
Well, and that's the thing though, and if you're gonna do metaphysical, like if you don't do your shadow work, like your own, looking at your own dark side, you won't get very far. You won't.
Right.
Because it literally will put a brick in your, what you're doing there. So
yeah. Yeah. And you can't play whack-a-mole with your shadow side either, because it's just going to come back.
No.
It will. Or to think that you're ever finished with it.
Well,
right.
You can
keeps going.
Major points of integration on that though, which actually helps. But it'll pop up like a jack in a box every now and then, but still, like the major stuff, most of it, I think you can go for it. So all right, so what's our next thing, Lisa?
The next thing that we want to talk about is intuition, instinct, and ego. One of my favorites. So the working definition for intuition is the natural ability to communicate with universal consciousness, angelics, and other people, And for me, it's about taking the next right step. And of course, the voice is always gentle and loving. Instinct. It's related to our reptilian brain and used for the survival of our species. That's when our instincts look for threats. And then, of course, the ego. This is our conscious mind. It functions with the help of the higher intelligence as well as the instinctual brain and can be swayed by our insecurities. So if it's your ego talking, generally it's talking smack about you or other people. So let's talk about the differences. All right. So does anybody want to take this or shall I keep going? Okay, I'll keep going. All right. So the difference. The differences between intuition, instinct, and ego. When you're walking down an alley and you get the chills down your spine, it's instinct. When you find yourself in a fortuitous situation, you can thank your intuition. And when your inner voice starts talking smack about you or the person standing next to you, that's your ego. So let's talk now about the difference between imagination and intuition. Kai, I thought this was interesting when you and I were talking. Susie, we got to talk more. But yeah, when Kai and I were talking about how, and because I'm stumbling, sometimes I feel like I'm stumbling in the dark with these disparate powers and empowerment that I'm experiencing as a new practitioner, and really trying to understand what is the difference between intuition and imagination, because a lot of times we ask ourselves, is this real, right? And what I am experiencing, is this really real? And the other day I came up with this metaphor, and Susie, I would love your thoughts on this. But the metaphor for me is kind of like imagination and intuition match, like through a fishing pole, for instance. So if you have a fishing pole and that's your imagination, it's like if you're like closing your eyes and you want to manifest something. So you're imagining, you're visualizing what that is, and then you cast out into the waters of intuition, right? Your subconscious. And suddenly there is this connection that happens between the imagination and your intuition via the pole.
Well, I can see imagination as being a tool by which you access your intuition.
Yeah.
So frequently people say, oh, I heard this. Is that my intuition? And I'll say, yeah. Or meditations often utilize, guided meditations will utilize visualizations where you go into your imagination and see yourself in this place, and then you go and play it out, and then your intuition kicks in as to what it is. Yeah, I think it's absolutely a tool of it. And yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah, that was a sad dribble off. Okay, go ahead.
no, I think that was fine. Intuition and imagination can work together, which leads to confusion, right? Imagination is also used when starting in metaphysics, especially when visualizing something. So I just kind of talked about that a little bit. And of course, as time goes on, it gets stronger and the differences become more apparent. But then you'll also notice more and more that what you thought you imagined was real. And I'm in that position right now. It's like, holy crap, that's real. Did I really fly off with a Morgan? Holy crap. So it's just, what? This is real.
And I get pretty flippant when people say, this is what I'm seeing. Is that true? And I'll go, yeah. And I've learned, I have come a long way in trusting what my intuition tells me. So being able to help people accept that is great. But that is true, that's where ego can come in. And you can say, well, my ego spins off. I have the t-shirt that says, wait, let me overthink this. And it's very easy to overthink things to the point where it throws you out of intuition and way past into that ego point where it's talking smack. I have often asked people, take your inner critic out to lunch, go see what they want, just talk to them, tell them to back off. That's using imagination, which helps you accept your intuitive answers more.
The last couple of nights, I've been trying to talk to my spirit guides and ancestors as I drift off to sleep, and I don't like what they have to say. So then I say, you know what? It's my ego talking. I'm just going to go to sleep, and I will be more intentional about getting with you tomorrow. But at which point I question, really was that my ego? Did I just not like what they had to say?
Well, in talking with ancestors or people who have, specifically people who have crossed over, I have had some that I don't like what they have to say, and they won't talk to me because they know I'm going to call them out on some sort of thing they manifested or they acted out in their physical life. Ancestors, when we're talking about those who are here to actually help, I don't know if that, I don't think they're necessarily set up to be mean to you, but they will probably tell you some truths that you're not happy to hear about yourself. But still, it's
Mhm.
entirely possible that those who have just recently crossed over just don't want to talk to you or they don't have
Mm,
anything to say. And so I tell them, yeah, thanks, bye.
yeah,
Y'all go on.
yeah,
Yeah, well, with me, when I talk to my ancestors, it depends on where they are in the, evolution of their soul kind of thing. I mean, if they're stuck between the worlds, then, we're arguing. Like seriously,
Mhm.
they're, and we've had this conversation where I've told you that, they're like, I can't believe you're telling me this. And I'm like, I got my temper from you. Like, what do you, like, what do you expect? And then the ones who have crossed all the way over, they come back and, yeah, like sometimes they tell me stuff I don't want to hear, but they actually tell me in a way that is much more, instead of being like really brutal about it, they're like,
Yeah.
sweetie, this is really not the best way to go about it. Maybe you should try this tactic instead. They're in others, they're much more subtle about how they deal with stuff. It's the ancestors that are still stuck, that I've gone to talk to try to get them to cross over. Those are the ones that are like, they're ornery.
yeah, yeah. I think the first time I channeled it was my mother-in-law at Thanksgiving last year, and she was still as bossy as she was in real life. I'm like, really, woman? No, I don't need to go join the Episcopal Church. I have my own community now, and you know that. She goes, yes, I know, dear, but I'm like, no buts, no buts. This is my life. Move along.
Okay. May I ask a clarifying question? When you channel,
Mhm,
Lisa, do
mhm.
you embody them or were you just delivering messages?
I was just delivering messages. It was
Okay.
Thanksgiving, and Andrew was pulling the turkey out of the stove and out of the oven, and he and his mother used to cook together all the time. And
Okay.
so I heard him pull the turkey out of the oven, and I heard him tenting it because I could hear the foil. So I came out of the studio, just kind of stood against the refrigerator, and I was talking to him, and suddenly I felt this presence just pop in between us, and I heard, yes, yes. And I'm like, oh, damn, I think your mother's here. And he's like, what? I'm like, you mind the turkey. You mind the turkey. Yeah, she's standing there. She's looking over your shoulder and she's saying, yes, yes, that's the way you tent the turkey. And then she looked at me. I felt like she was looking at me. She's like, you can hear me? And I'm like, yes, I can hear you. And so she just, she was like this in real life anyway.
Yeah.
So she just like, okay, I've got the highway now. And I'm like, well, not necessarily, but she just kept going. So I just kept interpreting for her. And they
Okay.
were having a conversation back and forth. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's my version of channeling for
Okay.
now.
That's good. Because I once channeled somebody who had crossed over and he was like, oh, yeah, I'm back in body. And so, yeah, I don't do that anymore. That happened once and that's all it took for me to go, nope, nope, nobody, nope.
Nope. Nope.
So yeah, the thing about you know, when we think about instinct or intuition and ego, I think the big factor to consider is fear. Like, are we acting out of fear? Like, are we doing this with any kind of fear at all? Because if so, intuition doesn't work if fear is in play. Like, if
Right.
you're afraid of something, yeah, intuition doesn't work and it's straight up ego. And if it's super fearful, that's instinct for sure, because
Yeah.
that's survival.
Yeah. Panic, panic, panic.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you're
But
feeling that.
intuition is also not just saying, oh, my guides told me to do this. It's not that spiritual bypassing, that's releasing accountability. I think with intuition, there's a balance between reasonableness and the intuition. So it's that discernment we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, all through these episodes. Where's the fear here? Is that a reasonable fear? You
Mhm.
know, because your
Mhm.
intuition may be telling you, yeah, don't go that way. And so it's not necessarily based in fear, but it's based in that caution or reasonableness, and that flat out fear or bashing yourself for and calling yourself names. Yeah, that's ego. So yeah.
Yeah. What I like to say, especially in business, is that usually we work with facts, right? And they're black and white. But for me, I see facts as being something that we need to start making a decision. But intuition for me is about how it gives it color and dimension. So at which point you can balance the facts with intuition to make a better decision, because a lot of what the facts, they're data points, but then there's still a lot of ambiguity that happens with that data. So that's when you tap your intuition, not out of panic, not out of fear, but through that
Right.
calm serenity, centeredness that says, okay, we know this, these are the facts, where do we go with this?
Yeah.
Well, and too, like I was telling a friend who was a real estate agent, you know, she invests in houses as her, you know, her husband and her they're building an empire, so to speak. And I told her, I said, you know, you look at a house, yeah, the numbers look great. Like, yes, I can do this, the remodel will cost this, blah, 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 blah. It's in a great neighborhood, rents could be this, blah, 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 blah. I said, but if you walk into the house or you're walking up to the house and you don't get a good feeling about the house, do not buy the house, because it's not
Right.
about the numbers. It's about something else, because you have to remember that people are going to live there.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you don't want to put people in an environment that's not good energy wise. So unless you are convinced that you can do something about the energy that's there, regardless of what the numbers look like, walk away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in the end, you have to ask yourself, does this feel right? Right.
Yeah.
And that's taking in all of those different components. Yeah. It's not just all black and white. It's the spectrum.
It's the spectrum and the dimensions. Yeah. And to your point, fear limits us and intuition opens possibilities. And so I would rather be in a centered place where I can start tapping my intuition, using that as a tool, not recognizing that I could do that 3 years ago, but using that as a tool to then inform the rest of my day or my strategy.
Intuition and instinct, they're really big subjects that we can't contain into a little bit. So come back next week to find out all the more things that we have, what kind of the clairs we have. How do you know which clair you have? How to develop them? How do you feel when one is working on you? Come on back. Stay tuned with this. It's a great, great ride.
All right. Well,
Okay.
Mystics, if you would like the show notes to this episode, head to our website at mysticmosaic.com, where you can learn more about us. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as hit that button for notifications, because sometimes we might go live. Make sure that you stay grounded, stay shielded, and stay magical.